What's up everybody, I'm Scott from Stringjoy Guitar Strings in Nashville, Tennessee, and today we're talking a little bit about open E tuning. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my own heart. I actually play in open E tuning almost all the time. I just started doing that about 6 months ago or something like that. For me, it just happened because I felt like standard tuning was getting a little bit stale for me. Felt like my hands were going to the same place all the time on the guitar and just playing the same songs over and over again. And I found that mixing up the tuning, particularly to open E, gave me a lot of new life out of my guitar. It made it a little bit more foreign to me, which enabled me to come up with some cooler ideas than I had been coming up with most recently. So if you're not familiar with how open E tuning actually works, basically you're just tuning up your 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings. Your 6th, 1st, and 2nd strings stay the exact same as normal, and what you're doing is you're tuning them up into your traditional E shape. So you're going to tune your 5th string up a whole step, your 4th string up a whole step, and your 3rd string up a half step to get that open E sound. So basically, from lowest to highest, we have E, and then B, and then E again, and then G sharp, and then our typical B and E. Like the name suggests, this means that your typical open strings in this tuning are just a standard E chord. In the non-slide realm of guitar, players like Keith Richards have used this a number of times. For me, the first song that I ever learned in open E was actually the Black Crowes' She Talks to Angels, which is basically just fretting that typical E chord on top of the open E. So. Something like that. The harmonics are really nice in open E as well because, of course, they have this really angelic chordal tone to them. It's a really great thing to be able to kick in when you can. So in open E, you have a couple different options in terms of playing style. You can definitely do a lot of big open runs that'll have that really big, boomy, and sort of majestic sound to them, not unlike She Talks to Angels, just because you have that big open E to kick back to. That's really nice. A lot of players will also use it for more country style licks almost, like a... Really, just because of the intervals, you have a great chance to be able to pull off at almost any fret that you're on so long as you're playing an E. You always have a nice open string that you can pull back to, which enables you to play a lot faster and play with dissonance in a very interesting way, kind of like that little almost country-esque riff that I just played a second ago. But it's not just for country-esque stuff or really angelic sounding stuff. You can definitely play it through distortion. You can make a lot of really cool sounds with it. I like doing it for kind of a really heavy rocking or almost fuzzy bluesy sort of thing, but obviously you can do anything you want with it. It's not the cleanest I've ever played that riff, but you get the idea. So enough screwing around, a little bit more to the point of the video. If you're playing an open E full time like I do you just want to use a typical standard set of strings? Like you might guess, the answer in most cases is probably going to be no. You're tuning up a whole step on the 4th and the 5th strings, and then a half step on the 3rd string, and because of that, those strings are going to be under really, really high tension if you're just tuning up a standard set of strings. Side note, if you're using just a perfectly standard set of strings, not one of our balanced sets, you're already going to have some problems where the 2nd string has a little bit too little tension and the 6th string has too little tension. So adding more tension on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings is only going to really further exacerbate those problems that already exist in like a typical 10 to 46 set or something like that. As a result, you're going to have like a massive 7-8 pound difference in tension between your 5th and 6th strings. It's not going to be a good thing, so if you can, you're going to want to optimize your string gauges to better suit the tuning that you're playing in. Now this can be done with any gauge of string. I'm going to show you what I have on this guitar right now, but basically what you want to do is just go down very slightly in gauge on your 3rd string. This will be pretty easy to do because it's a plain string, so chances are you can just go down 1/1000th of an inch, like from a 17 to a 16, like I'll show you in a second. And then on your 2 wound strings that you're tuning up a whole step, I would recommend going a full gauge down, which in the wound string case usually means going from like a 26 to a 24 or something like that, so 2/1000ths of an inch. On this guitar right now, I start with a typical 10. That's just what I tend to like on this guitar. I've used 9.5s, I've used 11s, I've gone all over the place. But for me, a lot of times I stick with the standard 10 up top. I'll do a 13.5 on the B string. We find that to be a little bit better than a 13, like we've talked about in other videos. 13.5 just balances a little bit better with that 10 on top. And then where it gets interesting is on the third string. Typically you'd see like a 17 next to these two gauges, but I'll go with a 16 just to balance out a little bit better when we tune up a half step to that G sharp. Now on the bottom end, where you typically see somebody going like 26, 36, 46, I'll instead go 24W, which just means a 24 wound rather than a 24 plain on that fourth string. I'll do a 34 on the fifth string, and for me, I'll typically use a standard 46 on that low E. You could use a 48 and you'd keep everything really nicely in perfect tension balance. For me, I find that can create a little bit of tonal issue with this particular guitar, so I'll just go with a 46 and it balances. I do have a little bit less tension on that 46 than I do on the fifth string, but for me, it suits pretty well and it balances overall tonally with this particular guitar. But of course, that differs depending on your taste and the gear that you're using. So that's what I use on here, and certainly you could use it as well. But don't think that you have to start with a standard set of 10s or something like that to get the same approach. If you wanted to start with a set of 11s, you certainly could. I would go like 11, 14. I would drop the typical 18P down to a 17 to help accommodate that G sharp. Then I would do a 26, a 36, and probably a 50, maybe a 48 on this guitar. It depends. But basically the same sort of principles hold true. You're just going to want to go down a little bit in gauge on those two wound strings where you're tuning up a whole step, and down just a smidge in gauge on the plain string where you're tuning up a half step. Now, like I said, I do a little bit of slide on this guitar, but generally it's set up for playing more with my fingers, so I tend to use lighter gauges, but a lot of guys that play slide will go way, way heavier than what I have on here and would actually probably laugh at me if they knew that I ever played slide in a set of 10s. I've got guys that will play in open E that will use really, really heavy strings for slide up to 17s or 18s or 19s. I don't think that's necessarily, well, necessary, but even something like a set of 13s or 14s could work really well. If you wanted to use like a set of 13s, doing something like 13, 17, 20 plain, 30, 40, 54, I think would work pretty well on the bottom end. But again, you can mess around with it and feel it out. Just remember those same principles will pretty much always hold true. If you're starting with a balanced set, just adjust your gauges accordingly and you'll have a set that'll work perfectly in open E. So I should say, well, I think that's the approach that works best, certainly for me and for most of the players that I work with on their strings side. Your results may totally vary. There are a lot of players, even players that have had really huge successful careers, that might have just used a standard set of strings and tuned it accordingly. It just depends on your taste. But if you do like having a more balanced tension, and particularly if you're playing more fingerstyle and it's not, kind of a little bit more awkward to have those differences in tension, where it's not quite as awkward on the slide side, I would really recommend giving this approach a try. I think it can work wonders for giving you a really balanced, playable set of strings in open E. So what do you think? Do you play in open E? Have you never played in open E before? Do you prefer standard set of strings, or do you usually customize them a little bit? Let us know down in the comments. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel so you can keep up with more great stuff in the future.